may not know me, I'm Steve Borchers with the Wayne County Foundation, and I'm just really excited to see everyone here this morning. A number of you, of course, in the room have heard me talk regularly about the Foundation's grant making and how we're seeking, we always seek the highest and best use of the limited resources we have. You've heard me talk about grant making as investing in the community and seeking measurable outcomes, and you have ignored me as effectively as anyone. I appreciate that. But our discussions at the Foundation have focused on how we might be more strategic and more effective at driving positive long-term change. And beyond those internal discussions, we have looked to the community to give us a sense of what is important and in what directions we should travel. These community discussions have become known generally as Forward Wayne County, and they've been built on the work of many others, but have led to a framework that looks to human capital development and quality of place initiatives as critical foundations to foster a vibrant economy and promote prosperity. As you can imagine, attracting, developing, and retaining a highly competitive workforce is the linchpin to that success over time. Now, our friends in Muncie and Delaware County have been engaged in similar discussions, and their work, like ours, has led them to understand that long-term economic development will be driven in large part by educational success, and more specifically, the development of young children at that critical time in their lives when their cognitive skills are growing fastest and forming patterns that will last a lifetime. So I'm just delighted that you can be here today to hear from Carrie Bale and Tom Kinghorn of Muncie by 5, because there is much to learn from their research, their efforts, their organization, and their early success.
I'm Nancy Green, convener for Forward Wayne County's Human Capital Pipeline Initiative and co-chair with Pat Heine of the Wayne County Early Learning Coalition, and I want to welcome you to this afternoon. I think that we have an excellent speaker and information for you. Today, we all have a much larger stake in this kind of work that we're going to be talking about today. The president of the Indiana State Teachers Association yesterday said that the top priority for the association in the coming legislative session is the lowering of the compulsory age to attend school from 7 to 5 years. The other news yesterday, the Indiana State Board of Education voted to increase high school graduation requirements starting in the 2019 or 2020 school year. The plan will impact today's 7th graders when they start high school in 2 short years. The Wayne County Early Learning Coalition was formed as part of a Birth to Career initiative and research and planning underway in Wayne County to assure our young people are prepared for school, the work world, college, and careers. A child's success starts at birth, and we all have to have a stake in making sure that every child, certainly in Wayne County, has the opportunity to succeed. We were introduced to Partners for Early Learners Indiana and Early Learning Indiana by Johanna Murphy-Sims, who was the regional outreach and capacity building person with Partnerships for Early Learners last year. With her help and counsel, we applied for and received one of 4 Early Learning Indiana grants of $25,000 this year to support the work of our Early Learning Coalition in Wayne County. So we feel very lucky in many ways that we have this opportunity. Our Wayne County Early Learning Coalition team is composed of experienced kindergarten professionals who are working with us to develop plans for events, information sharing, training, and the implementation of our research during the coming year. Another early learning success in our county is the Oak Park Learning Center, led by Danny Arthur and her team, who are providing age-specific education for early learners from crib to early classes. And Oak Park, and early this year, was the recipient of a $50,000 grant from Indiana to build out the existing space to accommodate additional children in their fast-growing program. Early learning is gathering a good deal of attention around Indiana, and our colleague, Carrie Bale, from Muncie, is Executive Director of the Muncie and Delaware County by 5 Early Childhood Movement. Prior to the joining and pioneering in the early learning coalition work by 5, Carrie was the Executive Director of Huffer Memorial Children's Center and Child Care Resource and Referral in Muncie, helping it to be an example for high-quality child care and to promote high-quality early childhood options in East Central Indiana. Carrie will introduce our speaker.
Hello, thank you so much for the opportunity to come today and share with you about some of the things that are taking place in Delaware County. We have so enjoyed getting to know and work with Nancy and Pat as we look to help them understand about Early Learning Coalition and what the goals are and what can happen in a community if we really get a broad-based community support around this critical topic that so many people just are really not sure about. And so that's what we hope today to leave with, a broader understanding of the why that this is so important, some examples of some ways that we have implemented some work in our community, and then be able to open the opportunity for questions. We would love that, so please be thinking of them along the way. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my board chair, who will start us off on our presentation today. I have with me Thomas Kinghorn. He was the Vice President of Business Affairs and Treasurer of Ball State University from 1980 to 2009. He joined the Ball State University Foundation Board of Directors in 1980. Prior to that time, he served a variety of capacities in business affairs since 1968, including 10 years as the university representative to the Indiana General Assembly and Commission for Higher Education. He received his BS in Business Administration and his MA in Business Administration in 1966 from Ball State. Primary areas of responsibility as Vice President included finance, annual and long-term budgeting, business service, state and federal government relations, human resources, employment benefits administration, accounting, campus facilities, building constructions, and facility management. In addition to that, Tom has been an active leader in the community with organizations such as United Way of Delaware County, the Delaware Advancement Corporation, Community Foundation of Muncie and Delaware County, Muncie and Delaware County Chamber of Commerce, Delaware County Country Club, the Professor Garfield Foundation, Cardinal Health Ventures, Cardinal Health Alliance, and TechPoint. He currently serves as the chairman of the board of the Muncie and Delaware County by 5 Early Childhood Initiative, an organization dedicated to promoting early childhood education in the community as an economic development initiative. Mr. Kinghorn was also named as the Sagamore of the Wabash, a distinguished service award granted by Governor Otis Bowen as a recipient of the university's Benny and Distinguished Alumni Award. And so it is my honor to be able to introduce you to Tom, and he's going to get us started off on our presentation today.
Well, thank you, Carrie, and it's just a wonderful opportunity to be here. As I'm going to explain, we've been at this in Muncie for a while, and when I was in the serving line, the question came up, how did you get involved in this? And in the limited time I have here today, maybe that's worth sharing with you. We were challenged actually by the Lilly Endowment to develop a transformative economic development strategy for our community. And you know, I'll have to say that we started out like most everyone else does. You know, what's the next company we're going to attract to town? What are the strategies that are out there in the economic development community? And so, you know, we had a lot of interesting ideas to put on the table. But and this took this is like a 2-year process. And at some point, we decided we would study communities that were successful and identify the data that described them and compare that data with what we had in Muncie. It's just like making an investment. You have a bunch of stocks you can pick from. If you have a sector that you're interested in, well, technology is an example. So you compare the stocks, you look at the base data, and you make an estimate of what the future might bring, and that's how you select your stock. Well, we collected data a lot like that for our community and compared with many others. And we were kind of shocked to find out that one of the keys, I guess this is not shocking, but this is what we learned. You all know this already, but there's a very high correlation between educational attainment and incomes in that community. Obviously, the level of poverty is tied to all that. And so every time we ran down an analytical path, we came back with education is the absolute key. And so we said, all right, now let's start looking into that. We drilled down and found out about brain development, something, frankly, I'd never heard of before. And we're going to share some of that information with you on kind of a summary basis, but there's much more available about what happens in a person's life between birth and age 5. So we started looking into the steps you need to take in order to have a firm foundation for the future of education. Now, some people, I mean, when we talk about this, we have pictures of children and all that, and that's wonderful. I think of them as future adults rather than as children. And if you think that way, you can see pretty quickly how this meshes very directly with economic development. The other thing we're going to talk about today is how do you build something called community will? But I'm a little bit ahead of my story. So this is a quote. This was made at the summit that was held 2 years ago in Muncie. We were going to get a collection of, maybe 100 people to come and hear the By 5 story. That's how it all started out. By the time we got finished, we had 700 people that came from throughout Indiana, from how many counties were there?
49.
49 counties who were interested in this strategy as a means of building economic development for their, in fact, it was called the Indiana Summit for Economic Development via Early Childhood. And that's an important distinction compared with a lot of other educational groups that had gotten together and talked about this. But John Pepper, this is his quote. John Pepper is, he and the CEO of Macy's, also headquartered in Cincinnati, are the leaders of the early childhood movement in that area. In fact, it's been going on a number of years. They just this last year passed a referendum in the county that Cincinnati is located in to have an income tax to support this strategy. So they've been working on it a number of years. And we went to learn from the folks in Cincinnati about how their strategy unfolded and what are the key steps you need to take as a community to be successful. And we're going to talk, one of the later slides talks about building community will. Well, who would guess that the CEO of Procter & Gamble and the CEO of Macy's would be leading an early childhood initiative in a community? That's a surprise. And so our message at the end of this is this needs to be, obviously it can't be successful without the practitioner community, but it can't also be successful without the leadership of the community understanding the impact of this and being involved day by day in a variety of ways, lots of roles to play, because there's a role for everyone in the community in making this successful, and I'll hope to explain some of that as I go along. So, John Pepper, the leader there, you're going to have your own John Pepper. I don't know who it is going to be, but that has to happen. The other thing, so we're talking about who we are and how we got started, the analytical data, and so one of the things I would encourage you to do is to get your data together, not just for this community, but compare it with others that have the kind of success that you seek, and you'll see the pathway. This is the front cover of our current annual report. And it shows, what I wanted to point out here, it shows the transition from the childlike behavior to the workplace. So we're talking about developing the talent pipeline that will fuel your economy and your community in the future. That's what this is all about. Okay, we have near-term goals and we have long-term goals. And we need to focus on both of those sets of goals at the same time. On the left-hand side, you can see the near-term goal is kindergarten readiness. And we're not talking about kids being able to do algebra and read necessarily and all those kinds of things. We're talking about a basic skill set. And so with that skill set, though, remember, I'm going to say this a number of times, 90% of brain development happens by age 5. As scary as it is to say and to think, by age 5, we all have the future pretty well in sight, whatever that future is going to be, positive or negative. And every community is made up of the sum of all the people who live in that community. Their contribution could be positive, it could be negative, but it has an impact on the whole community. But there's been tons and tons of research on this topic, and I asked an economist to talk about the economic impact of these kinds of strategies, and he said, I could do that, but he said it would be like me trying to prove gravity. The research has been done, all you have to do is apply it. And so you can see on the right hand of this slide, we're 17% more likely to graduate from high school if you come to kindergarten at age 5 ready. 4 times more likely to have a college degree. 20% more likely to earn a strong salary by age 40. And 46% more likely to have a full-time job. On the other side, you're much less likely to have been arrested or done drugs, less likely to have support of public assistance for your housing and so forth. Those are the kinds of things that all communities need and strive for. So I want to play for you a short video. We'll see how, yeah. This is about brain development in something like 80 seconds.
A child's experiences during the earliest years of life have a lasting impact on the architecture of the developing brain. Genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences shape the process that determines whether a child's brain will provide a strong or weak foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. During this important period of brain development, billions of brain cells called neurons send electrical signals to communicate with each other. These connections form circuits that become the basic foundation of brain architecture. Circuits and connections proliferate at a rapid pace and are reinforced through repeated use. Our experiences and environment dictate which circuits and connections get more use. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent. Meanwhile, connections that are used less fade away through a normal process called pruning. Well-used circuits create lightning-fast pathways for neural signals to travel across regions of the brain. Simple circuits form first, providing a foundation for more complex circuits to build on later. Through this process, neurons form strong circuits and connections for emotions, motor skills, behavioral control, logic, language, and memory during the early critical period of development. With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the others to support it. Like building a house, everything is connected, and what comes first forms a foundation for all that comes later.
So the strong foundation, I mean, it's use it or lose it. And so this is another graphic that you'll find out there. You can see newborn. This is the more than 1 million new neural brain connections every second in the first few years of life, and the process significantly slows down after age 5. It's pretty kind of sad. I'm 76, so how many do you think I get? You know, not very many. I hadn't thought about it like that exactly until I just read that. Maybe that's what my wife is talking about. But you can see between 2 and 5 years in an adult, there's not much difference because of the way that it grows so rapidly in those first few years. Much different than I knew about, than most people know about. Key part of the message. This process, using early childhood development as the foundation, the pillars, we all know in every community: educational achievement, economic productivity, citizenship, and lifelong health. They're all products of this foundation, and the kind of communities we're trying to develop are those that need that kind of foundation. This is a little bit of the data. It's not rocket science, but we looked at a bunch of communities in Indiana, and those that had high poverty rates also had low educational attainment or low median family income. And so, for instance, if you go to Hamilton County, Hamilton County has the highest academic achievement, or there are more people there that have college certificates of some sort or other than any place in the state. Highest income, population is growing. You can say whatever you want. I mean, there are people that, they're not perfect, of course, but a lot of the things people seek are happening in the kinds of communities that had the incomes and educational attainment all at one time. So here's another. This is done by a national center. It shows that by 2018, that's kind of coming up pretty quickly, almost 2/3 of the job will require some post-secondary education. Now, that's what we're talking about for 2018. But look back to 1973. In 1973, it was like reversed. In fact, the data shows that 75% or 72% of the jobs required a high school education or not, because that includes the dropouts. So society has changed. And in fact, I saw something in the paper the other day. Governor Holcomb was talking with a group. I think this was a group of maybe school-age children, but he was talking about the fact that 60% of the jobs that are going to be out there in the next 20 years don't even exist today. And we can all be assured that those jobs will require educational attainment at a very high level. So anyway, this is part of the record. What's happening here in our state is for every 100 ninth graders, only 18 earn an associate or a baccalaureate degree. Now, compare that with the 2/3 requiring educational achievement at the college level, and you can see that we're not keeping up. We need to do something substantially different than we're doing today if we're going to be successful. Here are the 60% higher education and attainment goal is something as a bedrock for the Lumina Foundation formula for success in communities. And as we traveled around looking at this, we were in Dayton, Ohio, for instance, and they were talking about the Lumina formula. And in order to get to the graduation rate they think they need to have in order to continue to be a community that attracts corporate headquarters, they know they have to do this, and they're on that track. You can see Delaware County, baccalaureate attainment level, and this is a community that has a major university and a hospital, and we're only 22%. and that's really low compared with where we need to be. I don't know what the data is like here, but I hope it's better. So statewide, it's 26%, and that's low compared with the rest of the nation. So anyway, get the data together that pertains to this area, and you will find it very useful. James Heckman is a Nobel Prize winning economist, and he's devoted his entire work to human capital development. And he has done a lot of analysis, and this is kind of an interesting graph right here, because you see the return on investment is lower in the blue area on your chart, and it is the highest in the area from age 0 to 3 or 0 to 5. You know, that's the place we're putting very few funds comparatively, and it has without question the greatest return on investment. But the preschoolers don't have much of a lobby on their own, I suppose, and so you can understand how it would be that way. And the other thing is, we're maturing as a society, and as the information gets out about data like this and others I've shared with you, it is clear that we know where we need to be working, and that's down in this 0 to 5 age bracket. So let me now pass on the podium here to Carrie, and she's going to tell you about some of the strategies we have going in Muncie and Delaware County.
Do you want to show first the U.S. Chamber?
Oh, yes.
Piece?
Back to, who needs to lead this? That was asked on a national level, and this is a document from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. You wouldn't think that these hard-nosed guys like John Pepper would be investing in things that didn't have a real purpose for themselves. And so this is the latest chamber document, and it says just the same things I'm talking about here. And it talks about the leadership responsibility that exists in every community to drive the future. And this playbook is the same. I mean, actually, we had copied ours from other people, but it's interesting that when I read this book, this is exactly what we're talking about here today, and what I'm sure you're going to be doing in this community in the future. So here, this is another one I brought along. James Heckman has done a great job of taking a lot of very important study information and boil it down into something that folks like us can sit and read in a short period of time and take away some important messages. So Carrie, take it away.
Great, thank you. One of the key things I'd like for you to remember about that very short video clip that I always like to stress is not only about the neural connections, which the Harvard brain neuroscientists used to say was 700,000 connections a second. They've now updated it to more than 1 million occurring every second. But the part where Tom referenced, wow, what's happening as you get to adulthood and what's happening there, you saw that there were some voids there. Those voids is what the pruning process is all about. Those voids are, you know what, you didn't use it, so you lose it. And that really starts to happen after the age of 5, which in our state, we're not even requiring kids to go to kindergarten until 7. So if they haven't had some skill sets already in place, some of those skills that they may have had an opportunity to get a little connection might already be going away. They're called windows of opportunity is what they're really looked at. It's not to say that those don't happen again, but they never happen at the pace and the rate that occurs between the 0 to 5 age range. And just like Tom said, we're not saying that children need to know algebra or be able to read by the time they go to kindergarten, but they need to have enough experiences, high quality, early learning experiences to make as many connections as possible for the strongest foundation for all future learning, behavioral, and health. The research out there right now around adverse childhood experiences points directly back to what happened with young children. If you have 3, 4, or 5 adverse childhood experiences, that automatically equates to heart disease, diabetes, all of that as an adult. The research coming out around that is just phenomenal right now. So if you have a chance to take a look at that, I would. And the last piece, just last week I saw a new study that came out that we always hear about Head Start and it doesn't work, and there was one minute study that looked at Head Start, but I will tell you they did not look at quality. They looked at a program that was not based off of quality. But what they are finding, not only does it help the children over the long term, but the second generation of children that are coming from families in Head Start are proving that they are showing up to school ready, that they are lessen behavior challenges, and they are ready to be contributing members of the society. So we're talking about babies who become parents who then have babies. That's what a community is all about. That's the impact that we're talking about here in the long term. Not did they do okay on a 3rd grade test. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about long-term impact. So what are we doing in our community? Well, when we started looking at this, we gathered our data. We said to ourselves, what's happening? Where are our young children? What's going on with them? And where are they? So we do know now that actually an increase in population is we have 7,200 children between the ages of 0 and 5. We have 51 licensed child care programs, and that could be registered ministries, homes, or centers. And we have 801 high quality spots. So not as many as we need for the number of children that we have. And then Tom already alluded to the 22% bachelor degree attainment. We have a lower than average median family income. Indiana is $49,000, the nation is $53,000, and Delaware County is $38,000. So we're definitely low there. So we just started gathering all of this information and saying, what are we going to do around this and how are our children faring? But one of the key pieces that I wanted to make sure I shared was 7,200 children, 801 high quality spots. Do you see the big disconnect there? It was very, very important for our steering committee to come to terms with this when we found that more than 60% of the kids coming to kindergarten in Delaware County had never been in an early childhood program. So we decided right from the beginning that our work was going to be comprehensive around this initiative, and that we weren't just going to focus on finding where the kids are in programs. If we did, we would have left out 60% of them, and that was not something that we thought it wouldn't help us meet our goal, to be honest. If we want to say all kids are ready for kindergarten and we're just going to forget about the 60% that never got into a program, we would never make any headway on our goals. So we ended up looking at this developmentally. And we ended up, once we realized where the kids are, 60% not in programs, 40% in some sort of program. We also know that brain research shows us that if 90% of brain development happens by 5, 75% happens by age 3. We could possibly change the trajectory of a child's future if we were able to help impact, or the families impact, at birth 1 or 2. And stop right there if we could find all the kids and make that sort of impact. So we wanted to make sure that the work that was going on collectively in the community covered the age ranges of 0 to 5. And in fact, we should probably see, as we color code this, more strategies focusing in the purple, the orange, and the red areas and the yellow than in the other areas there. And so that was one way in which we looked at it. It's called our developmental approach. And so as we started determining what strategies are going to be where, we said, what age range does this hit? And are we leaving ages out of the component from there? So how we ended up, you may say, how did you get to this part here, which is in essence what we call our strategy wheel. And this was a large-scale community process. So when I started, the question was, okay, the near-term benchmark is kindergarten readiness. How do we get from here to there? And that was a good question. We weren't sure. So we decided to bring in community members and help us figure out that answer to those questions. So we had about 80 committed community members who agreed to be part of task force work. And so what we did was we knew with research and Ball State's help, there were critical factors that we needed to look at for young children and families. We needed to look at strong families. We needed to look at early literacy. We needed to look at children's health. How are they? We had, at the time, the second highest rate of infant mortality in the state of Indiana was in Delaware County. So we knew we had to look at these critical issues. So people said, oh, I want to be on this task force. And so we posed the question to them and we said, if money was no object, what would we do? What's missing in our community? What's working really well that we should maybe expand upon? Or do we need to bring in some new things into the community? And so the task forces, under my direction, worked for about 7 to 8 months through this process, meeting monthly, sometimes bi-weekly, every 2 weeks. And they would say, you know what, we want to hear about this program. We've heard about this early literacy program. Can you have somebody come talk to us so we can understand it a little bit more? So I would help facilitate those conversations. And at the end of the 7 to 8 month time frame, we said, okay, time's up. It's time to figure out what we're going to do. And so we had, tell us your strategies, and we had 70 strategies submitted, which was a great problem to have, but it was way too many to start with. And so we broke it down into 4 critical categories, and what those categories were was has to be countywide. We have to reach as many kids as we possibly can. Some programs that service just 10 are fabulous, but is that going to really move the needle for where we needed? We wanted developmental, so 0 to 5. We also know that children don't develop in a vacuum. So if we only focused on their physical needs, we're leaving out all these other components on social, emotional, and behavioral and cognitive needs. So we wanted to make sure we had enough strategies that focused on all of those. So with that, we ended up having 25 fit into our grid that fell out on our grid. And so we call this our strategy wheel. And we saw a couple of themes emerge. One was that we had a group of strategies that were focused on healthy children. How do we ensure that children are born healthy and that they maintain being healthy throughout their lifetime, and that we're finding kids that have developmental delays early and getting intervention done early, those sorts of things. The biggest area is the red section, and that's our supporting families initiatives, our strategies. Parents are the first and primary teachers of their children. We must support them where they're at and lift them up so that they can do the #1 job that they have, which is raising their children. So if they don't know where their next meal is going to come from, or next month they're going to be evicted and have to go someplace else, they're not going to read 20 minutes a night. It's too, that shows you if you're in stress, there's different levels where you can focus on, and the focus is now. It can't be on the future with that. So what strategies, plus how do parents even know what to do with their young kids about brain development? So we were really surprised that that's where the majority of the strategies fell out. Then we have our green section, and the green section is all about the space in which children learn outside of their homes. In a preschool, child care, library setting, where are kids going outside of their homes? They need to be of the highest quality possible. And we also know that a lot of significant funds and emphasis has really taken place in the green section, and we thank the state of Indiana for their continued commitment in helping to continue having access to preschool. That's the green area there. And so we're so excited, and we know that there's even more work on the horizon. The one that was probably most surprising for us was the orange section. And what we found, and Tom already said this one time, is there isn't one person's job to get this all done. There isn't one entity. So to say to the early learning or the early childhood providers, you guys do this, you can fix this, it's not possible with all of the kids in your community. So what can your community do to support these efforts? And this is where we have seen significant progress in Delaware County. So much so that last year we have something called the By 5 Network. And it really says that you're going to take action around early learning and helping to figure out what it is that you can do. And last year we had about 167 in the network that have said, yes, I'm going to do something. I'm going to put a little free library here, or we're going to host a parent workshop here, or we're going to fund a program here. Whatever it is, however they choose to do it. But what this year, when we just finished tallying it up, we're over 400 in our network. That's our sustainability plan right there. Is if every single person in this community in Delaware County sees themselves as a part of this, then that's making sure we're impacting and getting with all of the families and kids and keeping it going. So there's lots of different ways, and we actually think our wheel in a year from now is going to look different, because this was created about 4 years ago. Some of the needs in our communities have changed. We're starting to deal with some additional things like mothers being born, or infants being born, exposed to opioids. So there's some other things that are coming up and bubbling to the surface. So we think in this next year that we might end up taking some pieces out and adding some new pieces to the wheel. And we think every community's wheel will look different based off of what your strengths and assets and your gaps are in your community. So I told you this before, I won't belabor this point too much, but this was really telling to us to say, wow, if we just focused on the kids in the programs, what sort of impact would we make? So in 2013, oh, the values didn't show up. Sorry, I told you this already, but in 2013, 60% were coming not coming to preschool programs, and you can see that we're actually starting to see a shift in that. And that this last year, we have 50%, just about 50% of kids now not coming. So although that isn't our singular focus, the community is helping make that happen, and more availability. Early Learning Indiana has provided support to make that happen, so we have more children accessing preschool. But it wasn't our singular focus. So it's exciting to see, rising tides raises all boats. We're starting to see it in different areas, even if that isn't our singular focus. So you can see in 2013, we had roughly 1,100 licensed child care spots, high quality spots in 2013. The number I told you, that 801, that was 2 years prior. So you can see there was some movement over that 2-year time period. 2013 was 1,100. By the end of 2017, we'll have over 1,400 high quality spots in Delaware County. Almost double that initial number of 800. But our focus is comprehensive. So what I liked, and kudos to the early childhood providers, because I like to give them a tap on the back and say thank you for this, is they've said, see that wheel? That's our part. We'll do that. We'll raise our quality. We don't have all these new programs being built in Delaware County. Who can afford that? But the existing providers have said, oh, you guys are listening. People are paying attention. People are asking me at church, how come your program's not on Path to Quality? And that they're going, oh, maybe we should. So we just are seeing this surge and this awareness take place. And it's because of this comprehensive work that's taking place. So we looked at kindergarten readiness. We've looked at it. That was our first data set that we realized we didn't have. How do we say we want kindergarten readiness when we don't really know what it is? In the state of Indiana, there's not a statewide measurement for kindergarten readiness, so we created one with the help of Ball State University and Teachers College, and it actually has been proven to be reliable and valid, and so we're very excited and feel very confident in the tool we're using. This is just a picture of Muncie Community Schools. We now are capturing 3/4 of all incoming kindergartners in Delaware County. But this is our consistent data over the last 5 years. The first year was a pilot, and then the superintendent said, you know what, we're going to make this so that we know and can be able to track and see how kids are coming along the way. Last year in 2016 was the first time we actually saw a statistically significant increase in the number of children that came ready. So we're really excited. We're hoping to see that trajectory continue. And if many of you have heard or in the news, we've had a lot of turbulence and transition with the Muncie Community Schools in the last year with school closures and children and families exiting the school system. So we anticipated then that our numbers wouldn't reflect that same trajectory, and it did come out just last month that it indeed didn't. But what that tells us is that the children that remained in Muncie Community Schools have far greater needs that we need to make sure, and it tells us where we really need to focus our limited resources. What I didn't show on here is that capturing 3/4 of the Delaware County incoming kindergartners, the whole collective group together is 40% not ready. So all of Delaware County that we have right now, 40% aren't ready. But if you see here in 2017, it's just shy of 60% just within Muncie Community Schools. We can show a direct correlation and overlap of mapping of our low-income neighborhoods, because we can boil this down per school and show you at this school 90% of the kids did not come ready, and then show you another school where only 20% didn't come ready. So we can show that, and then that helps us. That we go to our neighborhood associations, we go to our churches, and we say, what are we doing? What are we doing for this neighborhood? How do we reach the families? How do we help support them? What is not in place here? Do we not have any licensed programs? So the data tells us where our focus needs to lie. Do you want to come back up and talk about the...
Well, we talked about developing community will, and I think this is a really critical piece. I'll tell you, before I went to Cincinnati and they talked about it, I didn't understand what they were talking about, actually. And it isn't until this program is unfolded and I've had a chance to witness success and failure in other communities that I see how important this is. So, unlikely champions. Think about unlikely champions. I mean, there are, for instance, PNC Bank has invested something like $400 to $500 million in early childhood in the communities where they want to operate, because they know that they have a much better banking system if they have well-educated people that want to borrow money and, by the way, can pay it back. And so that's a leadership example that is kind of on a national scale. But there are, in every community, individuals who can see the big picture and want to move forward. So you've got to show the connection between early childhood and community prosperity. The data is there. If there are those in this community that want to pull that together and see how it comes out, we'd be happy to share what we did, and certainly there are other people too. So the current status data, some of which Carrie just shared with you, and there'll be missing data elements that you'll want to develop on your own that will tell more of the story. Demonstrate the linkage between early childhood and this talent development pipeline. I mean, we all typically think of the educational pipeline as starting with kindergarten. But now that you know about brain development, you know that there's a gap that must be filled in before that, and why. Establish an aspiration and a vision for the community is something that you can do. And it'll be germane to your community, different than other communities probably, but there are some similarities. And then all of these steps, in my mind, need to be taken before you sit down and start to plan. Because the planning will be far more effective if you have your homework done in advance.
So we wanted to let you know that momentum is building in the state of Indiana around early learning coalitions. So you can see it's particularly in the East Central Indiana area. Every place that has a star is either in beginning stages or has already started early learning coalitions. And so it's pretty exciting on our part to be able to support and have peers that we're working with around this and hoping to change the future of East Central Indiana. We just met with some individuals from the Northwest Indiana region that had started something a couple years ago, but they jumped right to the planning process and they went, whoa, wait a second, we didn't build the infrastructure necessary. Talk to us about what you're doing, and now they're going to go back up and work within the Northwest Indiana region. So the momentum is definitely building. It's palpable.
powerful, and I'm so excited that you all are here, Early Learning. I know Johanna goes around and sees the work that's taking place. This is just one example of an Early Learning Coalition taking place in Indiana. And I believe at this time, did you want to field any questions?
Because they know that this is the altar call and they don't dare get out of here without signing something to do on that sheet of paper. And I would bet that some of them might have questions before they commit their money, time, and all of their other expertise, because they aren't getting out of here, because there's a basket out there, and John Ford is right there in the corner. He will not get there out. Do you have questions, some clarification you might like before you think about what you do want to do? Jen?
So scholarships are readily most times available for preschool students, but what about for child cares? When families don't have the funding to be able to afford it to send their kids, and you have centers to run, and then you can say CCDF,
Yeah.
but they're not getting the funding to release it to the families.
No, we're actually in a crisis right now in the state of Indiana. We have 14,000 families on a waiting list for vouchers. These are families that are working at Dana knows this. To hear that number, she's going, oh my goodness. Knows that these are families that are working to go to school and qualify for these vouchers, and they're not getting them. They aren't there to be able to do it. So the question is, what are the supports that can be put into place for families? And really that comes to the community to ask, could there be scholarship funds set up that are on a subsidy type scale based off of families' income, that they can, a copay, and then the other dollars help support that. Even in the interim, until we could potentially see these vouchers start to flow again, would be one avenue to look at. Finding where the families are and supporting them. And I think I heard somebody say birth to fives in the room. Yes. You guys might know exactly where some of these families are. What supports can we put into place for them right now so that they can be doing high quality stuff with their kids while they're waiting to get into a program to be able to do that. So finding where families are is absolutely critical. And I gotta tell you, your healthcare system is one of the #1 touch points that has with families with young children. And so being able to make sure that they have resources. We've developed a lot, spent a lot of time in development of resources to give to families, and who we give them to are the healthcare providers, the DCS workers. That's another system. Do they know what to talk to families about early brain development? Do they know how to engage families? So you've got to find where the people are that are meeting with the families, and then we've got to continue to push to get the vouchers going for families.
So yes. That's #1. You have to become an advocate.
Yes.
And we have people in the audience to whom you could advocate, correct, Senator?
Mm-hmm. Yes. You know,
on the spot, but he won't get out. You notice he's up front, so he can't get out before the rest of you have a chance.
Let me make one comment on that,
Yes.
because we all need to recognize that the General Assembly has been stepping up. And to the extent that we do a good job, I think they'll step further forward. You saw this wheel up here, the multicolor wheel. I guess I've had a little bit of experience on the other side of the aisle from the legislators themselves, but I know what they face. And if you come to me as a legislator, and I have a multi-pronged program, 25 initiatives. One of them has to do with what you're asking me for, but they're telling me that they have all the rest of this going that will drive this program to success. I'm going to be much more friendly to that argument, is if communities are helping themselves while they're asking for the help of the General Assembly. And so anyway, kudos to what you've done, and we know what the roadmap is ahead, and so we'll keep moving in that direction.
And thank you, Doc. Was there another question? Yes.
Can you speak to how the business community has supported you both through volunteerism, mentorships, but also financially within the Delaware County community?
Absolutely. One, we have a very strong representation on our board of directors of the business community, one being the
President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Corporation for Delaware County. And so I look to them if we have to do something like this, or we need to rally the community around a particular topic. I look to the Chamber and the business sector to help bring in the forces, if you will, to help to share the message, to be a bully pulpit, to get that message out there. That's one of the key critical components. They have been able to fund at whatever their capacities are. Particularly, we've had a lot of success with our local banks, getting engaged and involved in the process. But we also we talk with the business community and we meet them where they're at. Actually, we do this with everyone. Have you learned about early brain development and what interests you? Is there anything? So we've actually had some businesses say, oh, we could do a little free library. We could put a little free library right out front, or we could sponsor one that could go in the neighborhood park. And so then they help sponsor it and get it going, and then it gets put there. And I always say that's our initial inroad with that particular business or entity, and then we work to increase continued level of engagement up to advocacy and potential funding sources as well. So we'll start wherever anyone is, engage them in the process, and then slowly move them. Did you have any examples specific there?
No, I think.
Mary Jo?
Carrie, how do you really know they're quality child care centers? Is it just a list that you check in? But when I've looked at some of those lists, it doesn't seem that some of those things are necessary. I mean, you may have them, but that doesn't say it's a quality care, and especially when you increase the numbers so quickly.
So in the state of Indiana, there is a benchmark for what high quality is, and the system is called Paths to Quality, and it's a leveled system, level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in Indiana, we say anything that's a 3 or a 4 is considered high quality. And Purdue has done longitudinal research to actually show that what's happening in a 3 and a 4 is different than what's happening in a 1, 2, or not on Paths to Quality at all, which impacts outcome for children. And really, that's the telltale sign. So it's not me. I don't go in and say, you're doing a good job, you're not doing a good job. But we have a very strong system in Indiana, homegrown system built for quality rating so that people can understand what is high quality.
Because we said 1 o'clock, I know you're going to be here a few minutes if you have other questions. Would you join me in thanking me? In all seriousness, this is the altar call, and I have 2 minutes. I trust you now understand why we wanted you at this luncheon. If you look around the room, and many of you know the other people who are in this room, we do represent in this room today all of the sectors that you talked about. We would like more people to be engaged and more sectors and more people from those. Our Early Learning Coalition has begun the work of data and some of that, but we have a lot to do. Maya Angelou says, and poor Mary Jo, she hears this quote all the time. I love this quote. You did what you knew how to do, but now that you know better, you must do better. So here's the do better. On your table, you will see this colorful half sheet, and it really does give you some opportunities to say how you could become part of this movement. First of all, you're going to advocate, you're going to spread the word. You're going to let the legislators know that compulsory education at age 7 is probably not the best for us, and you can work from there. But you can also advocate in your own business, in your own corporation, in your own faith communities, wherever it is that you find yourself. Number 2, you promise that you are going to read to a child 0 to 5. And if you don't have a child 0 to 5 in your neighborhood, in your family, we'll find you some children, right? Any preschool, they'll want you there. And just in case you don't happen to have a book to read to children, in the center of the table are books from the Dolly Parton Project, sponsored by Kay Reddy, and Kim English here is their program director. Jackie Scott and Becky Jewison are going to be working with them as well. you can fight over the 3 books. There are also 1, 2, 3, 4 more up here. There are 3 at that table. And I will tell you that Sherilyn Johnson from Hill already took the Dolly Parton book, so you don't have that one, but there are lots of other books that you can choose from. And in all seriousness, when we say read to a child for 20 minutes, the relationship, the connection, the bonding that connects you to that child in that 20 minutes is not just the book, but it is the person-to-person contact. Then we really do want you to serve with us on one of our working groups. These are the 4 that we have thought about at the moment, and after listening to her, there should be 10 more, and there will be the next time you see one of these. If you're interested in marketing and communication, we'd love to have you there. How do we enhance childcare opportunities? Not only expand the number, but the quality. How do we enhance preschool opportunities? And some of those all include the funding and the scholarship. You see the last one? There are at least 500 pieces of data that we have. How in the world do we sort through it? How do we find what works? And we can use all of theirs as a starting point, but there are other things. We just need somebody with an analytical mind who doesn't mind looking at all that stuff. But whether you're interested in any of these specifically, will you at least let us know your name, a phone number, and an email? And there is a basket out there, and this is, John Ford will trip you if you don't put this in the thing. There is more food. I think there are a few more desserts. There's some more to drink. Again, let us thank Tom and Carrie for coming. And we know, Tom, that our John Pepper is in this
You
room
bet.
right now.
That's
and
right.
if you would like to be the John or Jonathan, how about Johnette?
Yes, that
Johnette
works.
Pepper. We will encourage you to do that. Thank you for coming on this lovely Friday afternoon. Our best to you, and please stay around. We have a bit more chat. Do not forget the books, okay? Thank you.